The Galactic Council had seen many species rise and fall across the eons, but none had prepared them for humanity's arrival. Most civilizations approached the Void Stalkers with fear, the Crystalline Hive with caution, and the Shadow Weavers with outright terror. Humans, however, had done something unprecedented. They had invited these monsters to dinner. Ambassador Kethrol of the Valorian Empire stood frozen in the observation deck of Station Nexus, watching through reinforced transparasteel, as a human child no older than 10 standard years played catch with a creature that had haunted his nightmares for decades. The Void Stalker, a writhing mass of dark tentacles and glowing purple eyes that could phase through solid matter, was gently tossing a simple rubber ball back to the giggling human child. "Impossible," Kethrol whispered, his forearms trembling as he adjusted his ceremonial robes. "Actually, it's perfectly logical when you understand human psychology," came a voice behind him. Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth's xenopsychologist, approached with 2 cups of something the humans called coffee. Humans have an unusual capacity for empathy that extends beyond typical evolutionary parameters. Kethrol accepted the cup with shaking hands. "But the Void Stalkers, they consumed 3 of our colonies. We've been at war with them for 2 centuries. Because you approach them as predators," Sarah explained, taking a sip. "Humans approach them as misunderstood beings. The Void Stalkers aren't actually carnivorous. They feed on electromagnetic energy. Your city's power grids were simply the most abundant food source they could find. They never realized they were hurting anyone." Through the transparasteel, Kethrol watched as more impossible scenes unfolded. A group of human teenagers was teaching a Crystalline Hive drone how to skateboard, their chitinous exoskeletons sparking against the metal as they rolled down a ramp. The drone's usually emotionless face somehow conveyed what could only be described as joy. "The Hive attacked our agricultural worlds," Kethrol protested weakly. "They were trying to help," Sarah said with a gentle smile. "Crystalline Hive drones, our agricultural specialists on their homeworld. They saw your struggling crops and tried to improve them with their bioengineering. The problem was cross-species communication. They didn't realize their improvements were toxic to Valorian physiology." A shadow passed overhead and Kethrol instinctively ducked. A Shadow Weaver, a creature of living darkness with silver eyes like dying stars, descended from the ceiling. Instead of the terror Kethrol expected, the creature approached a human artist who was painting at an easel. The Shadow Weaver extended a tendril of darkness, and where it touched the canvas, beautiful patterns of silver and deep purple emerged. "Collaborative art," Sarah noted. "The Shadow Weavers are natural artists. They communicate through manipulated light and shadow. Your people interpreted their attempts at communication as psychological warfare." Kethrol set down his cup, his worldview crumbling. "How did you know? How did humans figure out what we couldn't in millennia?" Sarah pointed to another scene where a human child was showing a massive scaled creature, a bone render from the Omega sector, how to braid friendship bracelets with their enormous claws. The creature, capable of tearing through battleship armor, was carefully manipulating tiny colorful threads with the precision of a surgeon. "Because humans have a unique trait among sapient species," Sarah explained. "We instinctively anthropomorphize. We project human emotions and motivations onto non-human entities. Usually this is considered a primitive trait, but with truly alien species it sometimes leads to breakthrough insights." "But the bone renders are natural architects," Sarah interrupted. "They weren't attacking your structures. They were trying to improve them. Bone renders build with organic materials on their homeworld. They thought your metal cities were diseased and were trying to heal them by replacing metal with bone and cartilage." 3 months later, Kethrol found himself back on Station Nexus, this time as part of a delegation. The Galactic Council had voted unanimously to establish a new department, Human-Mediated Interspecies Relations. The results had been staggering. The Void Stalkers now powered 3 sectors of the galaxy through clean energy partnerships. The Weid-to-You Crystalline Hive had revolutionized agriculture across 17 systems. The Shadow Weavers had created the first truly universal visual communication system. The Bone Renders had designed living space stations that grew and adapted to their inhabitants' needs. But what struck Kethral most was watching the humans themselves. A human father was teaching his adopted Voidstalker child how to phase through matter safely. A human grandmother was knitting with thread spun by her crystalline hive granddaughter. A human teenager was learning shadow painting from their shadow weaver sibling. They don't just befriend monsters, Kethral realized aloud as Sarah joined him at the observation deck. They adopt them. Sarah smiled, watching as a human mother scolded her biological son and her bone render daughter equally for tracking mud through the habitat. Humans have always been a bit different. We're the only species that domesticated other species not just for survival, but for companionship. We made family out of wolves, cats, birds, even creatures that could kill us. But why? Sarah's expression grew thoughtful as she watched a mixed group of human and monster children playing a game that seemed to involve controlled chaos and lots of laughter. Because loneliness is the one monster humans have never learned to befriend. So instead we befriend everything else and call them family. As if to prove her point, the Voidstalker child phased through the wall and wrapped their tentacles around the human father in what was unmistakably a hug. The man laughed and hugged back, completely unafraid of the creature that had once terrorized the galaxy. In that moment, Kethral understood why the Council had unanimously voted to make Earth the new diplomatic capital of the galaxy. Humans hadn't just solved the monster problem, they had redefined what family could mean across the stars. The galaxy would never be the same. And perhaps, Kethral thought as he watched the impossible families below, that was exactly what it needed.